You wake in the darkest part of the night. The air has turned cold. The children beside you are curled tightly beneath animal hides. Beyond the shelter, something moves through the grass, then you notice the silence. No crackle, no orange light, no smoke. The fire is dead. For an ancient human, this could mean more than losing warmth. Fire cooked food, hardened wooden tools, lit the darkness, discouraged some predators, and created a place where people gathered. But if the last ember disappeared, was the group suddenly doomed? Not necessarily. The real answer depends on when and where you lived, because ancient humans did not gain complete mastery of fire in a single moment. First came the use of naturally occurring flames. Much later, in at least some populations, came the ability to create fire whenever it was needed. The oldest strong evidence that humans were using fire reaches deep into the past. At Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa, researchers found burned bone and ash from plants about 1 million years old, deep inside the cave where a natural grass fire was unlikely to have reached. That tells us fire was present in human life. It does not tell us exactly how those people started it. They may have captured flames from lightning strikes, wildfires, or burning trees. Once acquired, a fire could be kept alive by feeding it fuel. The group did not need to invent a new flame every morning if someone protected the old one through the night. So before sleeping, you do not simply walk away. You arrange the hearth, you add slow-burning wood. You cover hot coals with ash, limiting oxygen enough to slow the burn without smothering it completely. In the morning, a glowing coal can be exposed, given dry grass or shredded bark, and carefully blown back into flame. We cannot know the exact nightly routine at most prehistoric camps. Ash, charcoal, wood, and fibers decay or scatter easily. The repeated hearths at archaeological sites showed that people returned to fire again and again. At Gesher Benot Ya'aqov in Israel, evidence around 790,000 years old includes burned flint, seeds, and wood concentrated in particular areas. The pattern suggests that fire was not random. People organized activities around it. At Qesem Cave, also in Israel, researchers identified a repeatedly used central hearth roughly 300,000 years old. Food processing and tool use took place around the fire over many occupations. A hearth was becoming part of the architecture of human life, but tonight, your hearth has failed. Your first task is not to panic, it is to search. A fire can look dead while heat survives underneath. You push aside the pale ash with a stick. You feel for warmth without placing your hand directly into the coals. A faint red point may remain inside a chunk of wood. If you find one, the recovery begins with tinder. Dry grass, fine bark, plant fibers, wood shavings. Anything thin and dry enough to catch from a weak ember. You place the ember inside the tinder and blow gently, to little air, and it fades. Too much movement, and the fragile coal breaks apart, smoke thickens, the bundle glows, then a small flame appears, but suppose there is nothing. Now the problem becomes harder, especially for a group that knows how to maintain fire but cannot reliably manufacture it. One option is to find another fire. That might mean walking toward smoke from a neighboring camp. It might mean returning to a place where lightning recently struck. It could mean searching the landscape after a wildfire and taking a burning branch or live coal. Modern and historically documented foraging people sometimes transported fire between camps. Archaeology rarely preserves the containers or glowing material, so we must be careful about projecting any single method far into the past. Still, carrying a slow-burning piece of wood, bark, fungus, or protected ember is technically possible and would reduce the need to ignite a flame from nothing. Fire, then, may have connected groups. If your camp lost its flame, another group could possess something you needed. Approaching them might involve friendship, kinship, exchange, obligation, or danger. A shared ember could be a small object with enormous social value. Eventually, some humans learned to make fire directly. One method uses friction. A wooden shaft is rotated against a wooden base until powdered wood becomes hot enough to form an ember. This demands the right materials, dry tinder, careful preparation, and practiced movement. It is not as simple as rubbing two random sticks together. Another method uses percussion. Strike the correct mineral against a hard stone, and hot sparks can fall into tinder. Flint alone is not magical. The spark normally comes from material, such as iron pyrite being struck and shaped by the stone. For years, the earliest direct evidence for this skill was difficult to identify because fire-making tools can resemble ordinary stone tools. In 2018, Andrew Sorensen, Emily Claude, and Marie Soresi reported distinctive microscopic or on Neanderthal hand axes from France. Their experiments showed that striking pyrite against the flat side of a flint tool could produce similar marks and useful sparks. The study argued that some Neanderthals systematically made fire rather than waiting for nature to provide it. Then evidence from Barnham in eastern England pushed the possible history much further back. Researchers reported a repeatedly heated patch of ground, fire-damaged flint tools, and fragments of pyrite at a site about 400,000 years old. Pyrite is rare in the local deposits, suggesting that people may have carried it there deliberately. The researchers interpret the combination as the oldest known evidence of intentional fire-making. The case is powerful, but archaeology works through probabilities, not time machines. Some specialists have noted that the evidence remains indirect because the pyrite itself did not preserve clear striking marks. So the careful conclusion is that humans at Barnham probably made fire. Not that every human population could do so for 100,000 years ago. Knowledge was uneven. One group might create sparks on demand, another might depend on preserved embers. A third might use fire only, and the landscape offered it. That changes what the dead hearth means. In a warm season, losing fire could be inconvenient. You might eat food raw, sleep without light, and wait until another flame became available. In freezing weather, the same mistake could become an emergency. Wet clothing would dry slowly. Children, older adults, and injured people would lose heat faster. Darkness would restrict work and make the world beyond the shelter harder to monitor. Fire also changed food. Cooking softens many plants and meats, kills many pathogens and parasites, and can make calories easier for the body to access. The one missed fire did not erase the human ability to eat. Ancient people could consume foods that required little or no cooking, use dried provisions, or delay a meal. The greater danger was cumulative. A group that repeatedly failed to maintain or obtain fire would lose warmth, cooked food, light, protection, and valuable working time. In colder regions, that disadvantage could shape where people were able to live. This is why fire was not merely an object. It was a system of knowledge. Someone had to recognize good fuel. Someone had to collect it before rain. Someone had to understand tinder. Someone had to watch the hearth. Children had to learn what could be touched, what could burn, and how close they could safely sleep. A flame survived because a community maintained it. And once humans could create fire, the relationship changed. Nature no longer decided every time the night would become warm and bright. People could carry the possibility of fire inside a collection of materials and skills. Return now to your cold camp. You search the ash one final time. Deep beneath a blackened branch, a point of red appears. You add dry fibers. You lower your face and breathe. Smoke rises, the ember brightens, and when the first small flame curls upward, what you have recovered is not only heat. It is generations of observation, practice, memory, and trust kept alive in the dark. If you enjoyed this journey into the distant past, subscribe for more stories about ancient humans and human evolution.